Let me cast your mind back 65 years ago, long before the Speedmaster reached the moon on the first moon landing. The original model from 1957 was made to support auto racing teams and engineers on the track. Yes, you heard it first, not the moon landing, but auto racing teams. Along with its distinctive broad arrow hand and chronograph display, it was the first watch to feature a tachymetric scale on the bezel. The Omega Speedmaster 57 was first introduced in 2013, and it returns this year with a master chronometer upgrade and a slimmer profile. It also comes in a couple of different colors. It comes in black, which we've got today, blue, green, and also my personal favorite, a red burgundy color. There's been a couple of interesting changes about this Omega, and there's some things that I'm not too sure about, so let's talk about it. Today we have finally, and I say finally because I've been waiting for this for months, we have finally got the new Omega Speedmaster 57. It's sitting just here and we have the black dial. Welcome back to Time on the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison as always, and today we're going to be covering the specs of this model, talking a little bit about the range and history, and discussing what I like, but also what I'm not too sure about. Right, so let's start from the beginning. This comes in at 40.5 millimeters in diameter, so it has slimmed down in comparison to the previous versions. I am an extremely big fan of this. I have slightly slimmer wrists. They come in at 6.5 inches, so for me, the slimmer watches and that slimmer feel just suits a little bit more. And to add to that, I do feel like this is more of a dressy watch, and in my mind, dressy watches are that little bit more slim and that little bit more dainty. So it's a good change. The thickness on this model is an interesting one. Due to it being a manual wind movement instead of an automatic movement, it is a lot thinner than you'd think. It actually comes in, according to our digital calipers, at 13 millimeters in thickness. Actually, I would go as far to say as it comes in at 12.9 millimeters in thickness. So it sits quite close to the wrist, and that kind of carries on with that more dressy theme. As well as that dressy kind of style that we also have a lot more polished metal than brushed, which again reinforces the idea to me that it's more of a dress watch, but we'll move on to that in a second. Moving quickly onto the case and the bracelet on this model, and as I said before, the case and the bracelet are predominantly polished metal. Now, the reason why I think this is more dressy rather than more maybe sporty is because when you have polished metal, it shows scratches a little bit more than if you have brushed metal. But aesthetically speaking, I prefer polished because it reflects the light beautifully. When you shine this in the light, it looks magical. So it depends really where you're going to use this watch, where you're going to get most use out of this watch. If you're going to take this on expeditions, if you're going to take this into space, if you're going to do crazy things with it, then I'd maybe advise putting this on the leather strap or a rubber strap. But if you're not, keep it on the bracelet. The lug to lug on this model comes in, according to our digital calipers, at 49 millimeters, maybe just under 49 millimeters. So it does have quite elongated lugs that seem to kind of wrap around the wrist. Something that makes those lugs look even bolder is the fact that they're polished instead of brushed, so they have more of a wrist presence, which makes this watch look more elegant and dressy, and that carries on that dressy theme. Both the case and the bracelet have a combination of brushed and polished steel. If you look on the bracelet, you can see the central link is brushed and the outer two are both polished. Now, as I said before, I love the fact that this is polished. I love polished steel, but if you were wearing this outdoors, if this is a sporty watch for you, I would be very careful because polished steel does technically show scratches more than brushed does. Even though I prefer polished steel, I would stick with brushed because of my lifestyle. Then we get to the clasp of the bracelet, and it has a deployant clasp just here. That's very, very easy and very, very high quality actually. Sometimes I feel clasps and they can feel a little bit flappy, a little bit flimsy. This isn't, it's thick, good metal, and it feels quality. I also like the fact that the Omega logo actually overlaps. The clasp comes out from the clasp a little bit so that you can almost dig your nail under that. It's just a nice feature. It is that time again, that time for the wrist check. What is on your wrist today? I love seeing all the weird and wonderful watches that you guys have. This is a Chisholm Hunter tradition. Can never say that word, Chisholm Hunter tradition. On my wrist today is of course the Omega I got you, I got you. It's the Tissot PRX, and it's my new watch. The green dial is beautiful. Moving on to the bezel of this model, and the glass, and the face, and the water resistance, and the lugs, and the crown. We've still got a lot to cover, but before we do, please, if you enjoy these videos, hit that subscribe button. It's only one click away from you. And do you know that you touch your face over 400 times a day? And it's only one click to subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Before we move on to the face and the bezel and all that good stuff, it's important to get this on the scales and show you guys how much it weighs. So this is the full bracelet version. No links have been taken out. That comes in at 135 grams. Now, this is quite interesting. And I've cheated, so I know why it's interesting, but I'll show you guys first. My Tissot PRX green dial, my new Tissot PRX. Let's see how much it weighs. It comes in at 131 grams, but there has been 4 links taken out. So they weigh pretty much the same. And I suppose there are huge differences, one of the main ones being that this is automatic and this is manual. It's just quite interesting. The bezel is in stainless steel and it's quite a thin. I say that a couple of times because it is. And it's funny, even though it is that thin, it doesn't lose any of the legibility of the lettering. It has a black tachymetric scale round the steel bezel, and it doesn't lose legibility. And also because it's that thin, it has more dial real estate, which I'm a huge fan of. This looks good. And actually, in a world where everybody is going ceramic, everyone has ceramic bezels. The Rolex Daytona, for example, has a new ceramic bezel. I like the return of the steel bezels. I think it's clean, I think it's classy, and more dressy. The 2 chronograph pushers, both around about the 1/2 mark or 2 mark and around about the 4 mark, are quite prominent. And they actually make a really satisfying click when you push them. And that obviously works that chronograph. So that's a little detail that only watch nerds will love, but it's really, really satisfying. I like the fact as well that the crown that they've used is a little bit more short and stubby than the pushers. So the pushers are a lot more prominent than the crown. Again, a watch nerds love, but I'm a watch nerd. And finally, we get onto that black dial. Now, before we move on to that dial, I know that there's other variations. There's, of course, the burgundy, which is my favorite, or the red, the green, and the blue. I'd love to know what your favorite dial color is. To me, it's either the burgundy or the red. But you know what you could do? Is come into Chisholm Hunter, where we're actually authorized retailers for Omega watches, and try them on. See which one is your favorite, and then let me know on Instagram, Chisholm Hunter watches. I'd love to know which ones are your guys' favorites. So the dial on this model is of course black, but there's a very interesting fact about this dial that isn't on the other colors. This dial is actually a sandwich dial. So the hour markers are actually lowered into the dial to give the Super Luminova more presence. It gives this dial extra depth, it gives this dial extra quality, and I'm a huge, huge fan. I would like to see that sandwich dial on the other colors, but maybe that's something that they're going to bring out in the future. I just think it's so cool and it gives it that extra depth. And actually, when I look at the other colors, I'm kind of swayed towards black because of that sandwich dial. I would still choose the burgundy, but I like the sandwich dial. This model is, of course, a chronograph, and at the 9 o'clock mark, you have a 60-second counter. At the 3 o'clock mark, you have a 12-hour counter, and at the 6 o'clock mark, to my love, is a date window. Not at 3 o'clock, not positioned anywhere else, not a magnification window. There's perfectly positioned at 6 o'clock, and wow. The hands on this model are highly, highly polished and reflect wonderfully in the light, and that makes it highly readable, especially in the dark. Even when it's kind of dusky, we were shooting this at dusk the other day, and you still get those faint little bits of light hitting the dial, hitting the hands, so it's highly, highly readable. In certain lights, you don't even need the Lume to read it, just because it picks up the slightest bit of the light. Again, that's a kind of watch nerdy thing, but this is the community. We're watch nerds. Finally, it has Lume, and the Lume is beautiful because of that sandwich dial, but instead of me talking about it, let's have a look. As you can see here, the Lume shines bright green on the hands and the indices, and because of that sandwich dial, you can actually see the depth even when it's dark. This dial, it's stunning. Moving quickly on to the movement of this watch, which is of course manual wind and visible through the Expedition case window. This movement is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm going to tell a story, a bit of a weird story, but I'm going to tell a personal thing of mine. I actually prefer manual movements to automatic. I feel that when I have a manual watch on my wrist, because it kind of keeps you in a structure, you need to wind it every 1 or every 2 days at a certain time, you're looking and feeling and connecting more with your watch when you wind it. When you have an automatic watch on, you kind of just leave it on the wrist and then take it off and you'll assume it will be fine when you put it back on. With a manual watch, it's almost like driving a manual car. You're connecting with your watch more. And when you're buying something at this price, I feel that you need that connection. It's a long way of saying, I like manual wind movements. The movement in this model is the caliber Omega 9906, which is a manual winding chronograph with a column wheel and a coaxial escapement. It is certified by Master Chronometer, approved by METAS, and resistant to magnetic fields reaching 15,000 Gauss. It has a silicon balance spring, 2 barrels mounted in series, and a time zone function. It has a central hour, minute, and chronograph second hand, a date function, small second center, 12 hours and 60-minute counter, and a rhodium plated finish with Geneva waves in arabesque. It has a power reserve of 60 hours and a water resistance of 50 meters. The price on this model comes in at £7,740, which is, it's expensive, but you are paying for what you get. That movement is beautiful. And what's more to that, you can't find these anywhere. They're all sold out. They are so popular. And I've got a couple of theories, a couple of things that I think have impacted the popularity of this, one of which being the Moonwatch. I do believe, I don't know for sure, but I think that people have bought into the brand a lot more when those were released. And then the different color variations, Omega really made a statement with them, so people bought into that. And also, people went through 2 years of COVID where they couldn't travel, so they had money in the bank to spend. These are cool watches, and I really want to get my hands on the colored ones. Before I love you and leave you, I want to leave you with a thought, with an idea. And I also leave Omega with the idea, because if they did this, this would be sick. Imagine this. Imagine the colored dials. Imagine this Omega Speedmaster 57 in titanium. Now that would be cool. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Harrison. As always, this has been the Chisholm Hunter channel. Got that the wrong way round, but I will see you next time.